The Aurora of the Philosophers, or Water Stone of the Wise, by Theophrastus Bombastus Paracelsus. Part 1, Chapters 1 through 5. Chapter 1, Concerning the Origin of the Philosopher's Stone. Thoth, that is, Adam, was the first inventor of these arts, because he had knowledge of all things as well after the fall as before. Thence he predicted the world's destruction by water. From this cause, too, it came about that his successors erected 2 tablets of stone, on which they engraved all natural arts in hieroglyphic characters, in order that their posterity might also become acquainted with this prediction, that so it might be heeded, and provision made in the time of danger. Subsequently, Noah found one of these tables under Mount Ararat after the deluge. In this table were described the courses of the upper firmament and of the lower globe, and also of the planets. At length this universal knowledge was divided into several parts, and lessened in its vigor and power. By means of this separation, one man became an astronomer, another a magician, another a Kabbalist, and a fourth an alchemist. Abraham, that volcanic Tubal Cain, a consummate astrologer and arithmetician, carried the art out of the land of Canaan into Egypt, whereupon the Egyptians rose to so great a height and dignity that this wisdom was derived from them by other nations. The patriarch Jacob painted, as it were, the sheep with various colors, and this was done by magic, for in the theology of the Chaldeans, Hebrews, Persians, and Egyptians, they held these arts to be the highest philosophy, to be learnt by their chief nobles and priests. So it was in the time of Moses, when both the priests and also the physicians were chosen from among the Magi, the priests for the judgment of what related to health, especially in the knowledge of leprosy. Moses likewise was instructed in the Egyptian schools, at the cost and care of Pharaoh's daughter, so that he excelled in all the wisdom and learning of that people. Thus, too, was it with Daniel, who in his youthful days imbibed the learning of the Chaldeans, so that he became a Kabbalist. Witness his divine predictions, and his exposition of those words Mene Mene Tekel Phares. These words can be understood by the prophetic and Kabbalistic art. This Kabbalistic art was perfectly familiar to, and in constant use by, Moses and the prophets. The prophet Elias foretold many things by his Kabbalistic numbers. So did the wise men of old, by this natural and mystical art, learn to know God rightly. They abode in his laws and walked in his statutes with great firmness. It is also evident in the book of Samuel that the Beralists did not follow the devil's part, but became, by divine permission, partakers of visions and veritable apparitions, whereof we shall treat more at large in the book of supercelestial things. This gift is granted by the Lord God to those priests who walk in the divine precepts. It was a custom among the Persians never to admit anyone as king unless he were a wise man, preeminent in reality as well as in name. This is clear from the customary name of their kings, for they were called wise men. Such were those wise men and Persian magi who came from the east to seek out the Lord Jesus, and are called natural priests. The Egyptians also, having obtained this magic and philosophy from the Chaldeans and Persians, desired that their priests should learn the same wisdom, and they became so fruitful and successful therein, that all the neighboring countries admired them. For this reason Hermes was so truly named Trismegistus, because he was a king, a priest, a prophet, a magician, and a sophist of natural things. Such another was Zoroaster. Chapter 2, wherein is declared that the Greeks drew a large part of their learning from the Egyptians, and how it came from them to us. When a son of Noah possessed the third part of the world after the flood, this art broke into Chaldea and Persia, and thence spread into Egypt. The art having been found out by the superstitious and idolatrous Greeks, some of them who were wiser than the rest betook themselves to the Chaldeans and Egyptians, so that they might draw the same wisdom from their schools. Since, however, the theological study of the law of Moses did not satisfy them, they trusted to their own peculiar genius, and fell away from the right foundation of those natural secrets and arts. This is evident from their fabulous conceptions, and from their errors respecting the doctrine of Moses. It was the custom of the Egyptians to put forward the traditions of the surpassing wisdom only in enigmatical figures and abstruse histories and terms. This was afterwards followed by Homer with marvelous poetical skill. And Pythagoras was also acquainted with it, seeing that he comprised in his writings many things out of the law of Moses and the Old Testament. In like manner, Hippocrates, Thales of Miletus, Anaxagoras, Democritus, and others, did not scruple to fix their minds on the same subject, and yet none of them were practiced in the true astrology, geometry, arithmetic, or medicine, because their pride prevented this, since they would not admit disciples belonging to other nations than their own, even when they had got some insight from the Chaldeans and Egyptians. They became more arrogant still than they were before by nature, and without any diffidence propounded the subject substantially indeed, but mixed with subtle fictions or falsehoods, and then they attempted to elaborate a certain kind of philosophy which descended from them to the Romans. These, in their turn, being educated herewith, adorned it with their own doctrines, and by these the philosophy was spread over Europe. Many academies were founded for the propagation of their dogmas and rules, so that the young might be instructed, and this system flourishes with the Germans and other nations, right down to the present day. Chapter 3. What was taught in the schools of the Egyptians. The Chaldeans, Persians, and Egyptians had all of them the same knowledge of the secrets of nature, and also the same religion. It was only the names that differed. The Chaldeans and Persians called their doctrine Sophia and magic, and the Egyptians, because of the sacrifice, called their wisdom priestcraft. The magic of the Persians and the theology of the Egyptians were both of them taught in the schools of old, though there were many schools and learned men in Arabia, Africa, and Greece, such as Ambumazar, Aben-Zagel, Gerber, Rhasis, and Avicenna among the Arabians, and among the Greeks, Machaon, Podalirius, Pythagoras, Anaxagoras, Democritus, Plato, Aristotle, and Rhodianus. Still there were different opinions amongst them as to the wisdom of the Egyptian, on points wherein they themselves differed, and whereupon they disagreed with it. For this reason Pythagoras could not be called a wise man, because the Egyptian priestcraft and wisdom were not perfectly taught, although he received therefrom many mysteries and arcana, and that Anaxagoras had received a great many as well, is clear from his discussions on the subject of soul and its stone, which he left behind him after his death. Yet he differed in many respects from the Egyptians. Even they would not be called wise men or magi, but, following Pythagoras, they assumed the name of philosophy. Yet they gathered no more than a few gleams like shadows from the magic of the Persians and the Egyptians, but Moses, Abraham, Solomon, Adam, and the wise men that came from the east to Christ were true magi, divine sophists, and Kabbalists. Of this art and wisdom the Greeks knew very little or nothing at all, and therefore we shall leave this philosophical wisdom of the Greeks as being a mere speculation, utterly distinct and separate from other true arts and sciences. Chapter 4. What Magi the Chaldeans, Persians, and Egyptians were. Many persons have endeavored to investigate and make use of the secret magic of these wise men, but it has not been accomplished. Many even of our own age exalt Trithemius, others Bacon and Agrippa, from magic and the Kabbalah, two things apparently quite distinct, not knowing why they do so. Magic, indeed, is an art and faculty whereby the elementary bodies, their fruits, properties, virtues, and hidden operations are comprehended, but the Kabbalah, by a subtle understanding of the Scriptures, seems to trace out the way to God for men, to show them how they may act with him and prophesy from him. For the Kabbalah is full of divine mysteries, even as magic is full of natural secrets. It teaches of and foretells from the nature of things to come, as well as of things present, since its operation consists in knowing the inner constitution of all creatures, of celestial as well as terrestrial bodies, what is latent within them, what are their occult virtues, for what they were originally designed, and with what properties they are endowed. These and the like subjects are the bonds wherewith things celestial are bound up with things of the earth, as may sometimes be seen in their operation even with the bodily eyes. Such a conjunction of celestial influences, whereby the heavenly virtues acted upon inferior bodies, was formerly called by the Magi agamahia, or the marriage of the celestial powers and properties with elementary bodies. Hence ensued the excellent commixtures of all bodies, celestial and terrestrial, namely of the sun and planets, likewise vegetables, minerals, and animals. The devil attempted with his whole force and endeavor to darken this light, nor was he wholly frustrated in his hopes, for he deprived all Greece of it, and in place thereof introduced among that people human speculations and simple blasphemies against God and against his Son. Magic, it is true, had its origin in the divine ternary, and arose from the Trinity of God. For God marked all his creatures with his ternary, and engraved its hieroglyph on them with his own finger. Nothing in the nature of things can be assigned or produced that lacks this majesty of the divine ternary, or that does not even visibly prove it. The creature teaches us to understand and see the Creator himself, as St. Paul testifies to the Romans. This covenant of the divine ternary, diffused throughout the whole substance of things, is indissoluble. By this also we have the secrets of all nature from the four elements, for the ternary, with the magical quaternary, produces a perfect septernary, endowed with many arcana and demonstrated by things which are known. When the quaternary resists the ternary, then arises the light of the world on the horizon of eternity, and by the assistance of God gives us the whole bond. Here also it refers to the virtues and operations of all creatures, and to their use, since they are stamped and marked with their arcana, signs, characters, and figures, so that there is left in them scarcely the smallest occult point, which is not made clear on examination. Then when the quaternary and the ternary mount to the denary, is accomplished their retrogression or reduction to unity. Herein is comprised all the occult wisdom of things which God has made plainly manifest to men by both his word and by the creatures of his hands, so that they may have a true knowledge of them. This shall be made more clear in another place. Chapter 5. concerning the chief and supreme essence of things. The Magi in their wisdom asserted that all creatures might be brought to one unified substance, which substance they affirm may, by purifications and purgations, attain to so high a degree of subtlety, such divine nature and occult property, as to work wonderful results. For they considered that by returning to the earth and by a supreme magical separation, a certain perfect substance would come forth, which is at length, by many industrious and prolonged preparations, exalted and raised up above the range of vegetable substances into mineral, above mineral into metallic, and above perfect metallic substances into a perpetual and divine quintessence, including in itself the essence of all celestial and terrestrial creatures. The Arabs and Greeks, by the occult characters and hieroglyphic descriptions of the Persians and the Egyptians, attained to secret and abstruse mysteries. When these were obtained and partially understood, they saw with their own eyes, in the course of experimenting, many wonderful and strange effects. But since the super celestial operations lay more deeply hidden than their capacity could penetrate, they did not call this a super celestial arcanum according to the institution of the Magi, but the arcanum of the philosopher's stone, according to the counsel and judgment of Pythagoras. Whoever obtained this stone overshadowed it with various enigmatical figures, deceptive resemblances, comparisons, and facetious titles, so that its matter might remain occult. Very little or no knowledge of it therefore can be had from them.